AUF stands for Adjust Upper Face, and it is the last move after PLO in order to solve the cube. It is very important to recognize AUF during PLO recognition so you don't pause on the very last step. AUF recognition is done by looking at headlights or bars that do not move during the algorithm. So in this example we have a T-perm, and I know that these headlights, orange headlights, and this blue bar will not move. So if we just look at the blue bar for example, if it doesn't move during the PLO, then after PLO this side will become blue. So I have to do a U move to match blue with blue to solve the cube. Just like that. So without any further ado, I'll be going over how to recognize AUF for all 21 PLO cases. The timestamps will be in the description, so feel free to navigate your way through the video. So first we have U-perms. The recognition technique is the same for both U-perms. So here we have one of them, and a lot of people, what they do is they recognize it from the 3x1 bar because it is the most obvious feature. But the thing is, unless you're doing the RU algorithm from the back, it's probably not good to use something that you cannot see as your recognition. So I normally look at the front headlights because it's quite obvious because it's facing towards you. So we have blue headlights here. That means that the blue side will end up on this side, which means I have to do a U move after PLO to solve the cube. And exactly the same recognition technique for the other U-perm. And the same goes with H-perm, it is also the front headlights. So the recognition technique for the Z-perm or Z-perm is a bit more trickier. It also depends on which algorithm you use. So I use the M2 U prime algorithm, and so I look at the front headlights here. So these are blue headlights. But the thing to remember about Z-perms is that if you see blue headlights, it actually means that the opposite color, so green, is going to end up at the front here. So if green ends up at front, I'll have to do a U prime to finish off AUF. And U prime to finish off. So if you use the other algorithm that starts with the M prime U prime for the Z-perm, then instead of looking at the headlights, you actually want to look at the middle color at the front. And also the thing about the middle color is that the opposite color of this color will end up at the front. So I see a red edge here, which actually means that the orange side is going to end up here, which means I'll have to do a U2 for the AUF. And there's the U2 AUF. So with A-perms, a lot of people are actually tempted to look at the headlights, which is actually incorrect. The correct way to recognize AUF for A-perms is actually this 2x2 block here. So you can use the orange or the blue, it doesn't matter. I usually use like the blue because it's at the front. It's easier to see, so in this case blue will end up at the front, which means I have to do a U move to finish AUF. And it's the exact same recognition technique for the other A-perm. E-perms are pretty hard to recognize, but the AUF actually isn't that bad. The thing about E-perms is that it only moves around corners, so all the edges are actually correct relative to each other. And so I used to look at the front edge here, but actually now I'm actually looking at this side edge here. And that's because the recognition that I use for E-perm is to make sure that these two colors are matching. So since I'm already looking at these two pieces, which involves this piece here, I could just use that to recognize AUF as well. So in this case, red will end up on this side, so I have to do a U move to match it up to the correct side. So T-perms can be recognized using the headlights or the bar. It's easier to use the headlights, but I think it's actually quicker to use the bar. That's because once again, it's facing towards you, it's at the front, and it's easier to see. So in this case, blue will end up at front, so I have to do a U move to finish AUF. The F-perm has a long algorithm, but it actually has a pretty easy AUF recognition, and that's this really obvious 3x1 bar here. That bar will not move, so since it's an orange bar, orange belongs at the back, so I have to do a U move as the AUF. So with JPerms, once again, a lot of people just track where this bar moves. This bar does move, so you have to actually track where it goes. But like, it's harder to track pieces than to actually have pieces that stay put. So these actually stay put during the algorithm. So I normally look at this front bar here, and since it's a red bar, it's gonna stay here and it needs to match up to this side, so I have to do a U move to finish AUF. So with the other JPerm, the JA-perm, there's two different ways of doing it. So if you do it with your left hand, it's the exact same recognition technique as the previous one, except it's mirrored for your left hand. So here's orange, there's the orange bar, it's supposed to belong here, so it needs to I need to do a U prime to solve the cube. Now the other JA-perm algorithm that I use goes like this, and it actually has a slightly different AUF recognition technique. So for the algorithm that I just shown, it's actually okay to look at this bar since it doesn't move, but I actually find it easier to look at, once again, the front 2x1 bar. It doesn't move either, so since it's a blue bar, blue should be on this side, it's a U move to finish AUF. And with R-perms, so a lot of people, once again, they use the headlights for the R-perms. That would also be incorrect because the headlights do actually move around. It's actually, surprisingly enough, this middle piece here that doesn't move. So if you see a red edge here, that means red's going to end up at the front, which means a U move will solve AUF. Now there's actually quite a few different R-perm algorithms for this case, and all of them have a slightly different way of recognizing AUF. I simply just do the left version of what I just did. It also makes AUF recognition a lot easier because it's literally exactly the same. So yeah, the middle edge piece. Now moving on to the diagonal corner swaps, the most easiest one of which would be the Y-perm. So Y-perm's pretty obvious to recognize from this angle. This block and this block does not move, so I usually pick the front block. So blue here, blue needs to match up to here. It's a U move to finish AUF. Despite V-perms having a pretty bad algorithm, the AUF recognition is actually quite simple. It's the same as the A-perm, looking at the 2x1 block here. So it actually doesn't matter which algorithm you use. So if you use the one with the rotation, it's the exact same recognition technique. And of course, if you're fancy and you want to do the rotationless V-perm algorithm, it's exactly the same recognition technique once again. N-perms are also surprisingly easy to recognize despite having really long algorithms. It's basically also looking at the front 2x1 bar. So it's the same on every angle. You'll always have one 2x1 bar at the front. So pick any one because that one will not move. So here I got a 2x1 bar that's blue, which goes on this side. So I have to do a U move to finish AUF. So for the other M-perm, I used to be a crazy person and I used to use the lefty version of what I just did for this case, which would be really long and it would be detrimental to my times, but it's the exact same recognition technique. But I'm going to teach you a better algorithm because you don't want to be using the lefty version of that. So the other N-perm algorithm I use goes like this. And it's arguably much better than the other one. And also, the recognition technique for AUF is actually exactly the same. So once again, it's the front 2x1 bar because that does not move during the algorithm. So here I'll have to do a U move to finish AUF. And we finally made it to G-perms. So rule of thumb with G-perms, I use the RUD algorithms And so normally if you use the RUD algorithms, it's the headlights that you want to use as AUF. But if you use the algorithms with the wide moves, then it's going to be this 2x1 bar that you're going to use as AUF. So it depends on the algorithm, and that's just the general rule of thumb. So with the RUD algorithms, the headlights don't move, so red's going to end up here after do a U prime to finish AUF. And if you use the RUD algorithms for all your G-perms, all your recognition techniques will be exactly the same. So here's an example of a GB perm, once again looking at the headlights. Here's an example of a GC perm, once again also looking at the headlights. And finally the GD perm, also the headlights. So if there's any algorithms that you use that I didn't cover in this video, a simple trick to help you find a technique for your algorithm is to set up the case and just to match some random colors up. For example, if I match this bar up for this JPerm, and I'm just going to experiment, I'm going to do the algorithm. And if it turns out that you haven't solved last layer, that bar was the incorrect way to recognize AUF. So I shouldn't recognize from this bar. I'm just going to experiment and I'm going to match up this bar. See how that goes. I'm going to do the algorithm. And oh, look at that, no AUF, which means that if I set up the case again, this bar is the correct bar to use to recognize AUF. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.